Nekonny, world creator, avatar creator, VCAT ambassador, 知るほど好き start!
So anyways, let's start off with the very first introduction, first question. So we'd want you to kind of briefly say hi to the camera and let us know what you've been doing as a creator inside VRChat, and if there's like any other things you've been doing for the past years, please briefly tell about yourself.
So hello, my name is Nekonny. I am both the art director for the Kemono Cafe webcomic portal, visual director, and I am also the creator organizer of Mekamart, which is an online robotic avatar creation site. And currently, I also operate as ambassador for Virtual Market. Over the past couple of years, I've been working with VRChat since around 2000. After COVID started, there wasn't much of way for us to get around and travel. So I figured that since I was stuck at home, I would pick myself up a VR headset. I discovered VRChat and Virtual Market right on my first week of playing the game. And I started becoming really interested in getting back into 3D modeling. And I got to meet a lot of friends, people from overseas. Started making my own worlds. And at the time, I was really enthralled into the process of creation of webcomics. I had been a visual artist for quite some time, since a good 20 years I had been doing illustration work, and I was a webcomic artist at the time. And since I started becoming in VRChat in this virtual world, I became interested in being able to get what I had created in the online webcomic community and seeing if there was a possibility for me to actually promote that stuff online. So what I started as a result is, after I had learned how to make a couple of avatars, I started working on the mascot of the Kemono Cafe, which is the webcomic portal hosting site. And I eventually put a lot of work into it, and I made the mascot Sandy as a way for us to be able to create content online for the website itself. And when I was actually invited to participate, I was suggested that I participate in Virtual Market. I decided to bring Sandy into it as a booth character. We created a couple of booths in Virtual Market for the first couple of years, and they were really popular because I tried to do my best to create an immersive experience for all the guests and visitors that would be. And although I was able to reach a lot of people, I noticed that the way that VRChat is structured, and because there have several instances, there would be a lot of people that I would have no chance of meeting at all within the VRChat, because they would either be in other instances or speak a different language, and it was very hard to interact. And a friend of mine suggested, since I had made several robot avatars at that point, they suggested, hey, why don't you grab the robot avatars you have and you're no longer using and offer them up for sale? So I figured that would be an interesting idea, but I really wanted to encase it in a new system that was outside and separate from the Kemono Cafe. So at the time, a friend of mine had helped me, DX, amazing creator for VRChat. He does all sorts of different shaders and gimmicks and everything. He had been visiting me, and he threw together a shader that allowed us to be able to see things beyond the space that we are normally allocated. And it was a technology that I didn't quite understand, but he made it for the Kemono Cafe for us to be able to take a train ride. But I decided to implement it into this new booth system, which was for the Mekamart. I drew inspiration for the attraction ride. It was going to be an attraction that was basically based off of the Half-Life introduction, games like Half-Life, and a mixture between a Half-Life introduction and an attraction at theme parks. And since I really enjoyed my trips to Japan, and I was really familiar with like the convenience mart konbini scene, I decided to make the whole thing situated around a nice konbini, and decided to name it, Mekamart. Visitors would walk in, access the first floor, and once they passed through a portal, they would be transported to this special elevator, would immediately start taking them down and through this entire world. And it was very unexpected from a lot of people, and I had great reactions both from the Japanese and the American Western community. They really loved the unexpected thrill of it all. And for me, it worked great because I got a lot of responses online through social media. And I followed that up with actually a couple more avatars and more booths at later events. And I've been working on them till this day.
So you've been creating, I believe you've been an active artist for like roughly around 20 years or so. So what was like the original inspiration that, led you to kind of start, being an artist online and kind of start doing things? And what was the thing that kept you going on for so long?
So I've been an artist since high school, but I really started getting into it in college. I went to college for computer science, but art has always been a great big hobby of mine. I had a friend that was an artist, and I kind of followed in his footsteps. And I would do like a lot of pinup artwork. It was just, I was very drawn from the anime style, like a lot of people were back then and still are to this day. And I drew, and I would draw characters, but I always felt they kind of like lacked depth or personality. So I realized that a good way for me to really bring the characters out and have more sentiment to them was to actually throw them into a comic scenario. So that's when I started getting into drawing comics. I started with the 4-coma style comics, which was pretty easy, straightforward, and me as a beginner really could get into it. But eventually I decided to launch a full-length comic, which was my first full-length comic called Caribbean Blue, which went on for about 300 pages. What I found out at the time was that it was very difficult for us as artists to be able to spread our name around and get recognition. So the best way to do that was at the time, actually the only way to do that was to network with other artists. So I would start meeting up with other artists online, do link exchanges, chat with them, do art trades. And eventually I got invited to a webcomic hosting ring called the Catbox. And this was great because we started off with 2 artists, and I joined in, and then more people joined in. All of a sudden we had a dozen artists from all over the world, from El Salvador, from Mexico, from Europe, from plenty from the United States. We had me that was at the time was in Brazil. And it just evolved, and we became great friends. We attended conventions in the United States together. But then 2020 hit, of course. We could no longer do conventions together. It was terrible, and we really liked the fact that we could get together. But unfortunately, there was no way to do this anymore. And again, kind of like I mentioned before, that's when I kind of got into VR, and I saw the possibility of starting to progress and advertise online the same comics that we were doing before. Now, the Kemono Cafe steps in around 2009. The Kemono Cafe ended up being a spiritual successor to the Catbox because the Catbox closed down in 2019, and we opened up the Kemono Cafe in the same year. We started at the last event in the United States in 2019, and 2020, of course, there were no more conventions. So that's kind of like where we stopped, and we shifted completely to an online thing.
Kemono Cafe and the predecessor Catbox is a community of multi-nations and lots of people, I guess, and very interesting, tremendous, I guess, to see from a Japanese perspective.
I think that one of the main reasons that happens is because of the language barrier, because a lot of South American countries and European countries have English as a second language. So it's more easy for us to find a common language in English than it was for us to interact with a lot of Japanese artists. There's always been a big difficulty in having that, cultural interchange, which is another thing I like about being able to be on VRChat, because I get to meet all you nice, lovely people, and that barrier kind of gets broken down. So that's always been something great about, the virtual community.